Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hey guys, just dusting off the cobwebs of the Media Matters podcast. It's been a while since I've done this show. It's great to be on, and with football having a little bit of a break and such things, I thought I'd come back with some fresh content, talk about things. Obviously we're on. I'm recording this on the back of a Liverpool great win, I'd say, and a really, really positive result. And before that, of course, there's been so much angst and unrest and frustration from Liverpool supporters and just watching them in general. And we've heard so many opinions about the Reds and what's going on or what's not going on. And I thought I would bring on a fresh perspective on things. And the guest I'm going to introduce actually doesn't need an introduction. You've heard him many times on this podcast. He's very, very respected in the journalism field. Again, our Liverpool fans on Anfield Index absolutely love listening to this guy and his insight. From the Sunday Times, it is Jonathan Northcroft. Welcome, Jonathan.
Oh, hi, Nina. Thanks for the introduction. I wish my editor valued me the same way. I'm only joking.
Oh,
it's lovely. Thank you.
It's great to talk to you guys. Listeners, before we get into this, I just want to warn you and let you know that the life of a journalist is very, very busy. And right now, Jonathan is on a commute to Heathrow Airport, and he's a busy guy. So really, really appreciate him taking out his time and listening to me be his horrible company whilst he's out there, about to board a flight. But Jonathan, it's the last time we spoke, I think it was when football brought for COVID. I remember that.
It was.
Yeah. We were talking about old school football games, which I really, really appreciated. Luckily, there won't be much of a big break in football, but still long enough, I'd reckon. But Jonathan, let's get straight into it. So you and I are speaking on a Wednesday. Liverpool have played their game. And the words that we were all kind of hanging on to, I paid a lot of attention to Jurgen Klopp's press conference after the Napoli game because I was absolutely disgusted with what I saw. And he definitely looked like he'd had a slice of humble pie, and certainly a lot of the players as well, because senior players weren't performing. Jurgen Klopp spoke about reinventing ourselves. 2-1 against Ajax. Let's talk about this because for me, Liverpool deserved to win that game, and Ajax were probably one of the toughest side in that group, in the sense that they've been on a rebuild, losing a manager, losing key players, and they look so cohesive. So this was the real big test. And Napoli were the same as well, I guess. Lost 3 key players in that dressing room, and absolutely embarrassed us. But what did you make of the Reds yesterday? Because for me, it wasn't more of a reinvention. It was almost like going back to basics and doing things that you're naturally very good at. Like, my team looked recognisable to me.
Yeah, first of all, it's a really enjoyable game, I thought. Ajax are an interesting watch this season for the reason you say, what a club they are for just being able to refresh themselves with a new generation of talent. A bit flaky in places, but really dangerous, especially Kudus, who looks fantastic. So it was a real test for Liverpool, I felt. And I think you're looking for several markers. You're looking for one of the markers, of course, is energy and effort. And that was back for Liverpool.
Yes.
That the running, the pressing, the determination, the pitch coverage, that was back. And when you talk about back to basics, that's the very first thing that Jurgen Klopp's looking for, and the very first thing that gives Liverpool the identity. So that had returned. And then you look at other elements, I would say mentality. Napoli was a strange performance because it wasn't just the lack of sort of physical but it was this sort of almost supine and passive Liverpool from a mental perspective, a team that couldn't really respond to the setbacks. So I actually thought yesterday was a real test for the team because they were playing so well, they were creating loads of chances, ridiculous number of chances, and the ball wasn't going in. And it took me back actually to that 2019 Liverpool that never panicked and that stuck there to the end, and Villa Park in the last 5 minutes, and last minute equaliser at Watford, all that sort of stuff. It was that Liverpool who just kept going and finally got the goal. And one of my sort of favourite Liverpool players got it as well, Joe Matip. It's fantastic to see.
Yes.
That kind of shy smile when he does something good. But I mean, he's again, when you're going back to basics, you're going back to personalities that you can count on, players that you can count on. I really feel he's one of those unsung players for Klopp. And then on top of all that, you're looking for the football to be there. And I mean, 2 performances really caught the eye, I suppose, was Mo Salah, who was electric, especially in the first half. And I mean, I guess the main man in that team really these days, Thiago. I mean, I'm sure we'll go on to talk about him and the impact his return has made. But it was just like Liverpool had their dad back on the pitch. He was someone to boss the game, someone to boss the opposition, and some of the little passes were superb. And there were other good performances. I thought it was another encouraging night from Harvey Elliott and so on. But in particular, I think those two will be the foundation of a recovery, and they were really important last night.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And with regards to Mo Salah, I just remember him because again, one of the criticisms that of how Liverpool were sort of shaping up in games prior to this one was Mo Salah just pretty much hugging the touchline and not getting involved in the box and not linking up with the strikers and stuff and looking really, really isolated. And from minute dot, Jonathan, I kind of noticed that he was kind of cutting in, kind of running in.
Yeah.
There was a lot of I don't know, it was almost like they've been working on those drills. Like, okay, if you're, there's a lot of overlapping between him and Elliot, and Trent was doing it as well. So, there was, somebody who was probably further back, but he just felt like he looked more involved. He looked really hungry, and he looked like, and again, great to see Mo Salah get a goal because I think his confidence really needed it, because I think maybe as the season's progressing and obviously he's out wide, I'm sure that thought might have come into his head like, are my goals going to dry up here? Is my involvement in the creative aspect of things, going to be sort of diminished? So it's great to see him get a goal. I think it meant a huge deal to him. Again, that is Liverpool's most, I'd say, most deadliest attacker. And seeing him back and hopefully many more to come. You spoke about Thiago there, and my word. And I think, you said, it's like having dad on the pitch. And when you were saying that, I smiled because I remember when he first made his appearance against Chelsea and Jurgen Klopp did the unthinkable where he pretty much signed him and threw him on in the game. For the second half. And I just remember, first of all, he broke all the passing stats, I think, that were possible. And I just remember him on the pitch, and all the players were looking up to him like, oh gosh, this Rolls Royce kind of player. And he was pointing his fingers to where he wanted the ball to be played in the midfield. And everyone was just kind of watching him and taking notes. And, against that Napoli game as well, when he came on, he had better numbers than anybody else. He's such a smart player, and just having that kind of player on the pitch made Fabinho's performance a lot better as well, because he wasn't doing maybe 3 man's work.
I think that's right, and Harvey has been pretty good all season, but he responded to having Thiago, and you're right. He's this great combination between all the things that I suppose people celebrate Hendo for or for. As in having, or maybe even Andy Robertson having this big personality, this kind of drive about them. But he's got that, plus he's an incredible footballer, and it's a real combo. I mean, if I think around the league, maybe Thiago Silva at Chelsea's got a similar sort of amalgam of just an unbelievable personality and supreme levels of technique and all that kind of stuff. But he really combines them, and he was so. I don't know if I've seen him quite so vocal and demonstrative in a game, and it was almost like he was setting himself the task of, I'm going to reset this team. I'm going to really lay down markers in this game. And he was even, he's laying down markers to the referee quite a lot as well. But it was that real boss's performance where he wanted to influence and dominate and set the tone for what the performance was going to be about. And I mean, I did a piece on him last year, which was called Thiago in 10 passes, where I just looked at 10 passes he'd made in a game, all different, all leading to a different element of math, and all sort of telling you something different about how he plays. And there was a moment last night where Harvey Elliott got the ball, kind of centre midfield position, and he had to sort of thread his way through a bit of traffic, and he passed Thiago, and I mean, the ball was going to Thiago, and you thought, oh, this is a bit tight, because players were closing in on Thiago.
I know what you're talking about, yeah.
You know the moment, and he was actually really, the two players were very close to each other in distance, and those
first half, wasn't it? It was first half.
It was.
Yeah.
It was, and those, when two players are so close, it's actually very hard to get the weight of the pass exactly right, because there's less margin for error and all that sort of stuff. And I was like, what's Thiago going to do? And the pass was just a 5-yard pass out of this world, and it was perfectly through this tiny gap in front of Elliott, who he didn't have to break stride, and he could keep driving up the pitch. Just like, wow, that's a footballer there.
Yeah, and as soon as he did that, I got a text message from my sister. Obviously we weren't watching together, and she went, "That's what we've been missing." And I was just like, yeah, just absolutely incredible stuff. Yeah, he's an absolute magician. And again, like you said, I kind of like what you just kind of said, that he's kind of taking it upon himself from all the experience and playing in a quality side like Bayern Munich, and he's going to bring all that experience forward. And and again, he's a great mentor for some of the younger lads to kind of learn things from, and you could tell he kind of wants to be that figure that's very, very approachable in the dressing room as well. I adore him. And as for Joel Matip getting a goal, I mean, cult hero status, reactivated. Liverpool fans just absolutely love him, and I think it's more his reaction to everything. Again, I have to agree. It finished 2-1, and of course, Liverpool, I mean, take nothing away from Mohamed Kudus's strike. It was wonderful, but again, a question was asked of Liverpool. They got undone by some passes. People will lay fault on the right-hand side and the defensive side of things, and obviously people like Matip being pulled out of position. And of course, I think, Trent Alexander-Arnold being firmly put under the microscope there. But again, something that really impressed me from that, not the defending, was his reaction afterwards. He kind of went on the front foot and, tried one of his classic long distance shots. What I liked was the fact that it didn't shrink his confidence, which happened to a lot of players against Napoli, in my opinion.
Yeah, it did. And that was why the Napoli game was alarming. And, as I was saying, from a mental perspective, it was not the resilient sort of mentality monster Liverpool at all. And there's a different vibe last night. Of course, being at Anfield helps, but it's interesting, the thing with Trent. I mean, and I was going to say the sort of the grey cloud that was still over that performance was the goal that was conceded, because it was an absolute situation you want to avoid, where you've been dominating the game, and then the opposition have one good attack and it's a goal, and all that work you put into it, it's just gone in an instant. And it was, everyone was isolating Trent in the analysis and BT, and I think that's just going to be a theme of his career. We're going to keep, by 10 years' time, we're still going to be talking about this incredible, great player that maybe sometimes isn't doing the sort of hardcore defending. But I don't think it's ever an individual problem in a Klopp team. I think it's always a collective issue. And I think it was for Jurgen. I think he'd look at the performance and think, right, a lot of the hallmarks that I want were back, but I've still got this issue, and that issue is being played through. Liverpool were played through, and that's not the first time this season.
No, I would completely agree. It looks like, something that really will need to be addressed. I mean, do you think it could potentially be again, I support Liverpool, and you're always looking for options, and I think one thing maybe a through and through right-hand sided, central midfielder. Could potentially, could it be that, Melo gets thrown on the left and, Thiago
Yeah.
tries his hand at the right? Because as great as Elliot is, I think we can all agree he's a creative kind of winger. And, he might be more, suitable in a different formation. Like, obviously, Klopp did change it in the second half, like when we went to a 4-2-3-1. And maybe he's more suited to that kind of setup rather than being the right-sided midfielder, because obviously that's not his position. He's very young. He might adapt to it. He might learn it. That's the great thing about these young players. You can actually, but is it something that maybe a more senior kind of pro in that position might be better?
Yeah, I think that tactical job that Jordan Henderson has been doing for the last few years is now, maybe we can understand how important it's been, because he's been the one that fills those. He's been plugging those gaps, either when Trent moves into a central position or when Trent goes down the flank. It's Henderson as that right central midfielder that's been coming over, but he's also been filling gaps for Mo Salah as well. And it's a lot to ask, as you're suggesting, for like a 19-year-old or young midfielder like Elliot, for a young player like him to have to do that tactical job. And I think he's a different player. He's probably got more creativity than Henderson. He's got more desire to join the play and play quick little passes and so on and be involved. So he's not necessarily going to want to do all that off the ball filling of gaps that Henderson does. But that has to be worked on. There's still a need to solve that tactically in some way or other, if Trent is going to continue to be the player he's been for the last few years. As I say, it would help Salah as well, but he needs to be able to come in off the flank when appropriate. So that's one of, I think there's probably two conundrums really tactically for Klopp. That's certainly one of them. It's who's gonna plug those gaps on the right midfield, or maybe it comes from someone else. Then shuffling over. I don't know. That's the work on, but that's definitely got to still be in the intrigue.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. I think the right side definitely needs some cover. I know you kind of spoke about Jordan Henderson there, and for me, and it's not a criticism of Jordan Henderson in general, but for me, for the past 2 seasons, he's not been the player that used to track back as well as he did. I think, and again, it's the problem that I have with the Liverpool midfield, just in general, Jonathan, is the fact that it can't be depending on because of injuries. And I think when I always think about injuries, it's always the midfield that suffer. Maybe it's because I don't know what it is. Maybe they, it's they, I don't know, they push themselves and overexert themselves too much. I don't know, but that just seems to be a conundrum. But with the players right now, I would really, I'm quite intrigued. Melo's been brought on loan. We saw him a little bit against Napoli, but wasn't really paying attention to him. I can't lie, because I was so deflated. But after what we were watching, but again, these are all the fact that Liverpool looked recognisable and they were playing decent football. I thought, like you said, the finishing, the cutthroat edge wasn't quite there. The final third, and that was probably the most frustrating part of the whole performance. But of course, Liverpool have signed a player, and they've signed Darwin Núñez, and I just want to get your brief thoughts on him, because again, people are quickly writing him off. I mean, he had a bread and butter kind of chance in the second half. I think we can all agree on that. Obviously, went wide. You know what Twitter's like. I don't need to tell you what fans are like and how reactionary we can be. But people, doing things for clout and engagement. Like, thoughts on Darwin Núñez, and I just think you do realise, first of all, he's not had many games. Secondly, he's come into a team that has been bereft of confidence. The players that you kind of, when you walk into a Liverpool team, if I was a player and I've signed for Liverpool, I'm looking at the likes of Mo Salah for inspiration. And I'm looking at, like you said, Thiago, who was injured, by the way, for a majority of what Liverpool have played. And, your Virgil van Dijks and those kind of players, who are quality and class, and Alisson Beckers. You're looking at those kind of players, and when a majority of those players are not on their game, it's quite hard.
Yeah, no, it's been a difficult point in time for him to try and come into the team, as you say. And I think he's also, let's be frank about this, he's got a big problem called Erling Haaland, because they are going to get compared, like it or not. And they might, it may be that it's not Liverpool fans who are doing the comparison, that it's the wider media, but like it or not, these two guys arrive together, and actually Haaland's slightly younger, but they are similar age profile.
And big money as well.
Big money. And I mean, interesting. I do a column with Wayne Rooney for the paper, and he said something very interesting when he was assessing them. He said, there's no one quite like Haaland. He said, well, actually, the one player that's got the most similar profile is actually Darwin Núñez. This was before when they both signed and played at that point. Wayne thought that Liverpool made a pretty good signing because they'd signed almost the next best thing. But the problem is that Haaland is so prolific and so successful and so precocious that he's already changing perceptions of what a forward should be doing, and in particular a young forward. But he's done that his whole career. That's been the story of his career. He's just a phenomenon. And I think if he wasn't in the league and he hadn't started with 10 goals in 9 games or whatever his ridiculous thing he's already done, then there might be a bit more breathing space for Núñez. But unfortunately, he will be looked at through that lens. And the simple truth is, at this stage, no one's going to live up to Haaland. Núñez's job is to try over the next 3 or 4 years to get there, and players develop at different times. And he's already had quite a decent career, a pretty great profile of attributes at 22. So I think, Haaland needs to go out of people's minds, but I'm not sure it will, is what I'm saying. The other issue he's got, and this is why I said there's 2 sort of big tactical problems, I think, for Klopp and the integrate. It is that blend at the top of the pitch. This is part of Liverpool's evolution. This is part of the change that's necessary as Firmino has got older and with Mane leaving. They have got to find a new blend, but it's a work in progress, because that blend was so powerful. That front three was so good. The chemistry, the rehearsed movements, the way they complemented each other, and they had played together for a long, long time. And I think, funnily enough, Jota was the first to come in and kind of be something different. But
yeah.
Jota's a really, really, really intelligent footballer who can lots of different things and is almost a utility forward. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in a good way. So he was able to go and do those little different jobs quite effectively when he came in. I think the problem with Núñez is, and it's the same as Diaz, they are younger and they are probably more individual as players. It's how they've been trained. Núñez has been trained as an individualistic number 9 to an extent, and Diaz is been trained to be more your kind of individualistic wide player in the classic sense. So Klopp's got to get these talents into this convincing forward line with Salah, and I haven't quite seen yet, and I might not expect to see it either because it's new, but I haven't seen yet those moments that you would get clearly with Mane and Salah, where number 9 drops deep and wow, look at the two of them. They're almost in formation. One's run just perfectly tuned to the other's run. One's squaring it to the other. All that kind of stuff. It's just not there at the moment, and it has to be worked on. Now, Jota. It was interesting that Jota started as Klopp went back to basics, and it was clearly the right thing to do because of the outcome. But I felt that was as much to sort of go, right, okay, I'm going to park this trying to get the chemistry together for now, just go back to what we know we can do, and play a more, let's say, tactically adaptable and selfless player in that position. But you don't invest the amount of money Liverpool invested in Núñez without. He's not going to. He can't be the fourth option. He has to be one of the 3 starters, I think, or else it makes no sense making that signing. So he could have done with finishing that chance because it was a pretty straightforward one. that maybe told of his confidence. Overall, I've liked lots of bits that I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, after that chance, I do remember when he missed it. I do remember he went on to the left-hand side, and I remember sort of like, putting it past two defenders, playing the ball across goal, and Diaz just like basically whiskers away from not even touching it. So he was showing that I can assist and I can get involved in it. But you're right with the previous front three, because there were so many goals where all three would be involved, and we're just waiting for that to happen, and it will click, because obviously when those three first, Jurgen Klopp initially bought Sadio Mane, and then he bought Mo Salah, and obviously things take time to click. So we're going to have to wait, and I think another thing as well, which probably didn't help, was obviously his red card as well, and obviously sitting out that as well. So that you have to take all these factors into consideration with a player like Darwin Núñez, and I like the fact that you made that shout that people will naturally just compare him to Haaland, and and I mean he's an absolute machine. Do you know what I mean? Like, I watch him, and he's just unbelievable. His movement, how he is in the box, and he has that beautiful luxury of Kevin De Bruyne always pinging in the precise pass. The luxury. But I think, would you agree that just give the boy time?
Absolutely, because I was going to say, he has been talking about the blend and stuff, but it's only been because of the red card. He's only been on the pitch 5 or 6 games, so of course it's way too early. And if, as you said at the start, if other parts of the team would be doing better, there'd be less pressure. The people have just got to chill and give him a bit of time and put Haaland out of the mind. And try and look at this as like an ordinary player, and not compared to, he's not, it's not a machine like Haaland. It's a different player. It's going to take a bit more work. Nobody wants to give anyone time. Salah goes 5 games without scoring, and it's suddenly everyone's trying to pick over reasons for that, rather than he's just got 5 games without scoring. You know what I mean? So it's hard to get time in the way. In the modern game and in the modern media landscape, social media landscape, but that is the reality that Núñez will need that bit of time.
I completely agree with you. I just think it's a bit premature and very reactionary, and let's just wait on things. Right, Jonathan. So of course that was a really, really Liverpool fans are in a happier space. It was, we had to wait 7 days of pain. I think the break away from football probably did them a world of good to just kind of work on things and, get some training down. And I also believe that it was the first time that they actually outran their opposition this season as well. So, let's go back to before this game, because it was a hot mess, and, watching Liverpool was not fun. So, to me as a Liverpool supporter, and obviously covering the games week in, game in as a post-match, dealing with all that, they just looked massively unrecognisable, and it was really hard to you could point certain fingers, but, they just weren't great. And I think a lot of Liverpool supporters felt like this. There's been a lot of talk about this, but how did you perceive them? Before the Ajax game, because they just look very, very different.
Yeah, it surprised me actually. The drop off. I have to say, I think a couple of things have become clear actually. I mean, the thing that didn't surprise me was losing Sadio Mane has had a massive impact, and anyone that thought they're deluding themselves, and even I could see people sort of say, but it's nothing to do with the attack and blah blah blah. It's all about chemistry in a Klopp team. It's an 11-man game, so yes, Liverpool are still creating chances, but the balance, the chemistry, the everything has changed. And Sadio's a champion as well. We're talking about personalities in the right spot. That guy was a guy who again and again produced and scored late goals, or scored the only goal in a game when Liverpool hadn't played well. So lots of factors of having Sadio taken out. That was a big thing. And then you look at individuals who haven't been at their normal high standard. Injuries, of course. But the biggest thing that I think I kind of have taken away from it is really how Liverpool have changed. It really confirmed how Liverpool have changed as a team over the last couple of years. And I'm going to come back to Thiago. I think the evolution had been to become ever closer to City in possession and dominating the opposition, using the width of the pitch and spaces and having that metronomic passing. And Thiago was the centre of a lot of that. And I think taking him out of the team had such a big impact, an impact that you never really understood when you saw him out of the team. And it did show you that actually this team has changed, because I don't think we're used to seeing, like, the midfield's always been sort of quite a functional area, or traditionally a functional area, for Klopp. So, a great player like Wijnaldum could leave, but actually it wasn't really sort of a great servant like Wijnaldum. Maybe not a great, but do you know what I mean? A great servant to Klopp could leave, and it wasn't a huge impact because another functional, another player could perform those functions. But I think Thiago's changed the balance of all of that, and all sorts of elements weren't working without him in it. And then after that, you just got to. There are questions around the conditioning, the fatigue, and the physical output that I'm not the best qualified. You've got some great experts on Anfield Index that talk very eloquently about this, and that's not really my field of expertise, but it's certainly that noticeable, and particularly noticeable in a start of the season is always a time when teams are intense and they come back. They've been rested, and they're optimistic. So even the smallest teams are just full of optimism, new season. And if you're not at it physically at that point, you're going to be in real trouble. You're going to find it really difficult. You can get blown away. So Liverpool were out of step from a physical point of view as well. That's clearly evident. But yeah, it does start to feel more and more like this is a transitional phase where they're trying to move from one thing to another, and maybe this is going to be a more transitional season. And what I really paid attention to, and we might talk about this, was Jurgen changing his mind on transfers and midfield and saying, actually, I think I did need something after all, which tells you, I think, that Thiago's absence took him by surprise as well, the impact.
Yeah, I think so too. But I think he only made those comments, if my memory serves me correct, was after he lost Jordan Henderson.
Yeah.
To the Newcastle game. But you're right in terms of like just not looking right, and also the intensity as well. I just remember the first opening game, Fulham, and Liverpool just looked off it. And of course, the unfortunate Thiago injury didn't help matters as well. But Liverpool were quite lucky to walk away with a draw in that game, because I think Fulham surprised a lot of people in that game, myself included. We had big bold predictions for that one. I can't lie, But yeah, I think from the minute, I think they just kind of realised that, hang on a minute, teams are going to press, teams are going to be intense with what they do, and again, when there's bad results and performances, Jonathan, the theories come out as well. You've kind of talked there about transition. For me, to me, it seems more like a personnel issue, in terms of having the midfield, and all the injuries, and not having like a Naby Keita in the mix of things as well. I have no idea what's going on with him. There's been a lot of things. But anyway, speaking of theories, so a transition is a theory. The injuries, the lack of investment in the transfer window. We've also had maybe Liverpool playing so many games and then having a small pre-season because obviously the World Cup. So fatigue, mental and physical fatigue. A book by Pep Lijnders, Intensity. There's been, at that point, we're just playing a blame game or to, pinpoint something. Also tactically as well, what are Liverpool doing? Like we highlighted more Salah sort of becoming best friends with the touchline, in previous games. So, there's been a lot. To me, it just felt like there was just too much newness happening, and it was just really hard to maybe grasp it all. I have no idea what was going on. It could be the simple fact that tactically they weren't maybe comfortable with what they were being asked to do, and it was something that maybe they were learning. But yeah, it was it was horrible. So I'd like to get your thoughts on that and all the theories. And do you have any more you'd like to add in the mix?
Oh wow, yeah. I mean, well, I mean, the theories are advisable. A lot of them. I mean, to start. This, of course, I've talked about the overheated social media landscape, and this is a result of it. That there has to be a big reason for everything. Somebody has to come up with a theory, because that means you can then write 5,000 words about it, or you can, draw attention to yourself by, or a bit of punditry, that grabs. That's where we are. People are looking for dramatic stuff because it grabs the attention. And, unfortunately, that's a motivation in a lot of analysis these days. I mean, I thought the Linda's book theory was ridiculous. Maybe people don't understand how books work, but it's not like, yes, his book was released, I think, in August. That doesn't mean that he was been writing it, in the middle of the summer. It doesn't mean he's writing it in August. That book will have been completed more or less last season. You write a book and then it takes a couple of months to come to publication. So actually, if writing a book was the issue, why were they getting to the Champions League final? Because he'd have probably been finishing the book round about that time. And what's harmful about that? It's trying to give an insight into Liverpool's culture. I just don't see the issue with it at all. And Pep Lijnders is a very communicative person who likes to discuss ideas and stuff like that. It's not like he's changed character and got ahead of himself by deciding to write a book. I mean, the guy loves to talk football. I thought that Mo Salah has signed a contract, so now he's got his cigar out. A ridiculous
I forgot
theory.
that one. Thank you for reminding me of that one. Thank you. Yes.
Well, I mean, one of the ridiculous things about that theory was that when he hadn't signed his contract, that was being used as a reason for his drop off in open play goals. He's unsettled. He needs the certainty of a new contract. That's a big problem. It's a distraction. You need to get that deal done. Then he gets the deal done. Oh, now he's signed the contract. Now he's given up. And it's just, come on, guys. Mo Salah's a champion. Mo Salah has been an utter champion for Liverpool and for Egypt for 6-7 years. Are we really going to start questioning his mentality now? It's mental. So I thought that was ridiculous. It's more interesting talking about the different little tactical things and physical things, because probably all of them have contributed, and yet there's no one big thing.
Yeah.
And I think the final factor that's really hit Liverpool hard is, I always remember something Rafa Benitez used to say about, the evolution of teams and transfers, and he would always say, it's not just what you do, it's what your rivals do. So fans and media tend to look at clubs in isolation and think, they need this, and if they get those players, or if they do this, make this change, things are going to be better. But they forget that the opposition are also investing and changing all the time. And I think Liverpool have suffered because their rivals have had a really good summer. City have had a brilliant summer. We could see that transfer-wise, incredible. And I think Arsenal did really well with what they had, and Spurs did really well. And then all of a sudden, Manchester United did so badly in their first two games that they said, they went from, we're going to spend 80 million quid to 250 million quid almost overnight, because I wouldn't say they panicked, but I think they just realised half the extent of their problem, shall I say. So suddenly, I think, Liverpool, who've always been a bit more measured and, thinking 18 months ahead, maybe caught in the hop a little bit. And it's not great, because fans are looking to have the same buzz that the opposition fans are having. And there's probably a bit of a period towards the end of the summer where Liverpool fans were not getting that buzz and watching the opposition maybe starting to do things that the club Liverpool hadn't expected, maybe the offer to invest quite so heavily. So I think that's another element that's created this kind of overheated environment around the analysis of Liverpool. It's just what the opposition have been doing, watching them doing well.
I think those are all fair comments, and I think, just going back to, how kind of Liverpool started as well, I just remember them just absolutely, bringing their A game against Manchester City in the Community Shield, and then a week later, and I think that was the shocking aspect of it. It was like the complete drop off. So that got us really excited. Like, oh, okay, you look good,
Yeah.
things are clicking. Oh, Nunes looks good. Look at him get a goal. You're
Yeah.
seeing all the positives, and then a week later, literally a week later, you're like, oh my God, what's happened? Okay, maybe it's just new season. It's fine, and then it carried on. I mean, we're going to talk about this. You touched on, rival teams and how they've invested, and we're going to get into that. But this team came into the season as a quadruple challenging side. Of course, won two of those domestic cups, the League Cup and the FA Cup. Hindsight is a wonderful thing, isn't it? And I guess, Jonathan, what I kind of want to ask you here now is I'm going to break this down into two segments. Quadruple challenging side. So you kind of then look at that season, and I enjoyed it as a Liverpool supporter. I can't lie. I thought, Liverpool playing every single game, keeping it alive till the very end. That's what football's all about, right? And that's what being a fan of a football club is all about. So you then walk back and you think, okay, well, you build on that, and you know what Klopp is like, and they're going to build on this. So the two questions I kind of want to ask you with regards to Liverpool being a quadruple challenging side previous season is, did they do enough in the transfer window to build upon that? And in hindsight, if they didn't have the muscle or the means, or they wanted to keep relatively a small kind of squad. I mean, it wasn't their fault because the injuries happened. I mean, I remember that bench against Man United, and it was laughable. I can't lie. When you look at that bench, there's so many youngsters, absolutely no options off that bench. But I guess the two questions I want to ask you on that is, did Liverpool do enough in the transfer window? And was that what kind of took the sting out of them, in a sense that, if they're not going to invest like other teams, then should they maybe just focus on certain things?
Yeah, I mean, they didn't invest enough. But I mean, I've got to be honest, I'm putting on my Captain Hindsight uniform to say that, because I was in the middle of the summer saying, look, you've got to trust this club and its recruitment, because it's very strategic and it's measured, and it's worked. They've planned ahead really well over the last 5-6 years, and it looks like the strategy has been, we're going to wait for Jude Bellingham essentially, and we can get away with another season with the midfield roster we've got, with Harvey Elliott back, with Carvalho in the mix, and it hasn't happened. But as a journalist, I was getting soundings at the start of the summer. You talk to people with the game scouts, agents, and there was a lot of chat about how this isn't going to be a big transfer summer. This isn't going to be one of massive spending. None of the clubs are really going to do a massive amount. And I'm sure Liverpool would have picked up the same vibes and would have, will be better researched than any journalist is. So they'll have had the same soundings, and I think expected something similar. And then it's those factors that you can't necessarily control, but it's a Chelsea takeover by a group whose mode, as we've seen in American sports, is to invest hard up front, and going out and distorting the market, maybe by doing things like paying 60 million for Cucurella, who's a really good player, but wouldn't have been a 60 million pound fullback. It's as I said, Man United panicking and going big. It's Arsenal beating the system a little bit by getting those two great players out of Man City. Really good signing. And I think Spurs recruitment has been very, very good since Conte and Patrici got together. So it's all those factors that I think Liverpool's fault was not responding to it. And I think that's where Klopp's comments are coming from. I think there was probably a window in the last couple of weeks of the market where they probably should have done more, I think. We'll see if Arthur Meller's the right, is enough. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if maybe he's a Thiago light. Maybe, I've been mentioning how one of the things that we've realised is how almost more important than ever Thiago become. Maybe that's the Meller's stuff. But I don't, as you've mentioned, I don't see him doing the Jordan Henderson job. So I think there might have been I think there might have been a net in one of the other types of midfielders that will look like a Cachado or whatever. And we'll see. We'll see. But, I mean, Liverpool have got to be measured with their investment and prioritise the number 9 and spent a lot on Nunes. And guess the Nunes and Diaz signings will be, to a certain extent, when we're looking back in a couple of years' time, they'll be the definitive ones because they're where the budget's gone. And then, of course, if they do get Jude Bellingham next summer, then again this summer strategy might make sense. Or it's not going to be Jude Bellingham putting through a massive target, but it'd have to be someone else of that stature if for whatever reason they miss out on him. So that again, I'm sort of saying it's probably we're not really going to be able to judge the strategy properly until a year's time. But my instinct is Liverpool being caught a bit on the hop by other clubs' activities and injuries and so on, and maybe could have reacted quicker in that last few weeks of the window.
Yeah, for me, I just kind of feel like, when Gini Wijnaldum left, because he might not have offered, like he was like that quiet little player in the midfield that just got on with his job. Like I hate that term water carrier, but he never got the plaudits that he deserved, and he was like sort of press resistant, and you couldn't run past him, and he was so expansive for Holland, and he'd get all these goals, and Liverpool fans would be like, well, what does he do for Liverpool? And it's like, well, he was actually there just doing a job, being a barrier for the defense, and those skills and attributes are like massively missed. So I think what Liverpool should have done is identified all the injuries in the midfield. We know Jordan Henderson's, it gets a fair few injuries. We know it's the same with Naby Keita. You knew that when you bought Thiago as well, that he's going to get injured. He's going to play X amount of games for this much. So for me, like the recruitment should like slowly just bought players of a similar quality, like just kind of freshen it and mix it up if you want to be that kind of juggernaut that challenges like Manchester City, who, have, great players on the bench, like they can afford to sit Mahrez on the bench, and Mahrez has been doing exceptionally well for them. They've got Ilkay Gundogan, like these are quality players, and they can sort of mix it up and change it up, and I guess that's maybe the difference. So for me, I just don't think that they should have gone out and bought a brand new midfield. I think that's insane, because then we go through that transitional period, which is never ever good for anybody. But if you just season by season bring in the right player and kind of fits, and then you're not in a reactionary phase, which I felt like the Arturo Melo coming to Liverpool was reacting to a lot of injuries. James Milner, as a great a servant as he is, has played far too many games for Liverpool than what he should be doing, and that's not his fault. That's because Jurgen Klopp requires him to do so, because the players weren't there, beginning of the season, and you have to. And I love Jurgen Klopp, but you have to say it how it is, that, it's not been overly great. So, that's been my understanding of the recruitment. You touched on something then. You spoke about, rivals and oppositions. And of course, this Liverpool team is trying to go toe to toe with Manchester City. And I actually think they've done pretty well, but, pretty well doesn't quite cut it. You want to be winning it. We've already beat them to the title once. So how do Liverpool compete with them, given, there is a massive financial gulf between not even like a team like Manchester City. You kind of touched on Manchester United there and Chelsea. And then you have a team like Newcastle, who I think will be creeping up in the next 5 years. And I think they're going to be scarier than everyone, given the amount of financial muscle they'll have. I mean, how do Liverpool compete in those confines? He spoke about Jude Bellingham, and it's really, really exciting, and you think he'd probably want to work with Jurgen Klopp and this team. But we saw with what happened with Tchouaméni, Real Madrid threw a lot of money because they didn't get Mbappe, and head was turned, and I can see similar things happening with those kind of players. I'm a complete realist. Yeah,
that's right. Tchouaméni's another one that was on the very much on the radar and missed out. I think what Liverpool have got to be careful about is not assuming that what's worked up to this point is going to keep working. And what's worked up to this point has been the smartest recruitment in town, pretty much. The forward planning and the executing of deals at the right time, at the right price that had happened under Michael Edwards and so on. And I think what Liverpool can keep clever analysis, they have scouting network, the same evaluations, but other clubs are catching up, and maybe that's a big issue now um, that, that the rivals are now. Liverpool has been famous, so of course clubs are going to want to copy it and maybe follow the Liverpool model. So you mentioned Tchouaméni going to Real Madrid. That's Real Madrid changing their model, by the way. They're suddenly looking at Camavinga and Tchouaméni, and I know they've gone down that younger route with the Brazilians a while ago with Rodrigo and Vinny Jr., but it now looks like they are looking more at the future Galacticos rather than the current Galacticos. And then you've got PSG are starting to look at different type of recruitment since Campos went there, and they've been looking at free transfers, maybe not quite the established superstars, but sort of smarter deals. Arsenal have done well, as I said. I think United's recruitment has basically been let's ask Eric what he thinks, but actually that may actually help the recruitment. It's been better over the summer, I would say. And then, as I say, Spurs have become smarter, and the smaller clubs are becoming smarter. And I think Liverpool, you start off by saying, how do Liverpool compete? The way they've always been able to compete is, okay, we don't have Man City's money, but we've got more smart. But actually, Man City's so smart now. Their transfer they made a transfer profit this summer, and I find that pretty frightening for the rivals. Different. They picked out Haaland. Obviously, is actually quite an expensive deal despite the fee. We know the agents are massive, but they got the player. They got the player they wanted. It looks like they've got Calvin Phillips at a really good price. And they've sold well. They did what Liverpool had always done, which was sell the off cuts at really high prices. And then the centre back that they brought in, name escapes me, I'm getting too old. That looks a pretty smart signing. The squad management, the churn has been really, really good at City. So the draw, I think Liverpool maybe the ownership has got to face the reality that it's not just going to be smarts now. It might have to be investment on a bigger scale. And I think Liverpool's net spend is still pretty low compared to those rivals. And it might be that the purse strings have to open, like in that phase when suddenly Alisson and Van Dijk arrived, and the spending changed. There was a step change there. Maybe that's a similar sort of bit of investment. It's beginning to look that way to me. I have to say, it's beginning to look like it might be that a couple of more big signings are needed. Certainly that midfielder now, and I don't know, I'm beginning to wonder at the back as well.
Yeah, it's definitely something definitely has to change. I think that is an absolute given. And of course, we forget to kind of mention that this is like Ward's first sort of like transfer window as well. So again, there's that kind of pressure as well, because we've always had like Michael Edwards, who was just so slick.
I guess it hasn't really, it's not necessarily been the inability to close deals. It looks like Ward's done pretty well on closing those deals. It might be that the model just has to change a little bit, or the systems have to change. Because just doing the same thing again and again and again in any walk of life, there's a point where it stops being as effective as it used to be. So it might just be that has to either be a big financial change, or looking at a slightly different market, or looking at things in a different way, or activating deals a bit earlier than they used to, or just I think the fear is that the rivals are catching up with the smartness of recruitment, and therefore Liverpool will have to rely on something else.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be really interesting, Jonathan. I think the Virgil van Dijk and Alisson deals were kind of facilitated with the Coutinho sale. Something that Liverpool have always done is sell big to reinvest. And obviously at the moment, I'm just looking at that team and thinking, I don't really want to sell anyone. They've all been given, all the key players, like the star players, have been given like their contracts. So it's just, you're kind of thinking that that some of these players are absolutely in their peak and in their prime, and you don't kind of want to, like you said, you don't want to disturb it too much. So it's going to be very interesting to see what Liverpool and FSG come up with in this. Something does have to give and something has to change, and I think for the right player, I truly believe, maybe it's the optimist in me, that money will be put forward for the right player, but again, will it be enough to compete with other people? That's the concern as a Liverpool supporter. Jonathan, before I know we've been talking for a while, which is awesome. I love talking to you. Before I let you go, because I want to end this podcast on a positive note, given the fact that there's not going to be no football for nearly a month now. And I guess what I want to ask you is the simple fact that I'm taking any little bit of confidence and positivity that can Liverpool build on this? Is this a good stepping stone, a good building block for them? Because any other season beating Ajax would have been like, yeah, Liverpool beat Ajax at home, but it just felt so much bigger to me this season, given the fact that what I've been witnessing. So I just want to get your thoughts on that. Is this a good time for the Reds to have a break? I know we've got an international break as well.
Yeah, yes, I was laughing at you saying there's a month about football because clearly you're not going to be glued to those England games coming up.
Absolutely. Now, I will be washing my hair. Listeners know how I feel about international football and watching England. I've made those sentiments very, very clear.
Fair enough. Well, in terms of a break for Liverpool, it has come at a good time, let's be honest. I think it was always going to be an odd season because of the World Cup, and a season where it was really important to start well. So much of it played before that break in November, so it's been a slow start. But what's going to be really key is this phase. I think the key for the whole season for everyone is this phase between the international break ending and then teams and everyone going away to the World Cup. It's kind of solid month and a half where the Champions League group phase is going to be completed, and where more or less half the league program will get up to. So Liverpool have to be good in that phase, and the break gives Klopp a chance to reset, get players back from injury, maybe address some of those tactical questions that we've been posing. You might not have the players there on the training pitch, but it'll be a chance to do some thinking and some planning. And the difference going into that break on the back of a good win makes is huge, because it relaxes people and it gives him confidence that the fundamentals aren't missing at all. They're there. He captured them, and now it's time to build on that and try and make sure that when Liverpool come back, they're flying, back out of the blocks, flying and attacking that really important part of the season. As I say, and I mean, can you think how different it would have been if that Matip goal hadn't gone in, and last night ended up in a 1-1 draw where you're saying, well, Liverpool played really well, but at the back of your mind you're thinking, but it still wasn't a good result, and it left, and the group phase would look messy. Liverpool at 1 point after 2 games, so really that was the right win at the right time, I have to say, and makes this break just that bit better for Jurgen and Darth to sort of their work on making sure things are right when they come back.
Couldn't agree more. And you would have had a very, very horrible host today if that was a draw, So, and yeah, you're absolutely spot on. It would have made the group really, really messy. Like, it absolutely would. And obviously Liverpool's next game is against Rangers. So, you're kind of like looking and analysing those things now as well. And you're thinking, well, okay, if they get another win here, they start looking healthy again. So, yeah it's all looking great. And I'm glad you kind of said that, and again, you highlight the fundamentals were right. And if your fundamentals are right, you just build upon that, So, again, plenty to hopefully be optimistic about. But Jonathan, thank you so much for talking to me and giving our listeners such great insight, and on commute as well. And we really, really appreciate that. Before I let you go, where can people find you on social media, and is there anything you'd like to plug?
Yeah, no plugs today. You can find me at Jonathan Northcroft, so at J Northcroft on Twitter. If If you want to jump over the paywall, you can find me at the Sunday Times. Find me company on the motorway. I spend too much of my life on the motorway, so it's always nice to have someone to talk to, someone nice to talk to. So, and your listeners are lovely people, so thanks very much.
Oh no, it's been an absolute pleasure. I will be billing you for services. Just kidding, just kidding. No, it's an absolute. Thank you so much for your time. It's tough times, Jonathan. You got to do what you got to do. But no, just seriously, I've loved speaking with you. It's been ages. It was good to talk about Liverpool and the current situation. But guys, thank you so much for listening as well. And we hope you enjoyed the podcast. We hope you can kind of have a little break with like some kind of positivity. And once again, thank you to Jonathan. Thank you for you guys for listening. Take care, and hopefully I'll be back with the Euro Incision podcast. So you'll hear from me again, guys. But thank you so much for listening. Take care. Till next time, up the Reds.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at anfieldindex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index, and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.